welcome to episode 72 of the Craft House Magic podcast. My name's Ellie and I'm coming to you from Norwich in Norfolk in the UK, and today's the 27th of June. So welcome everybody, I hope you've all had a lovely week. Last week I uploaded a video on how I did my cabling without a cable needle, so I hope you find that useful. And I apologise for the podcast going up about a day and a bit late because I had issues with my computer, but it's sorted now hopefully, so hopefully it'll be on time from now on. So you can find me on Instagram, Ravelry and Facebook as Craft House Magic, and I've also got my own website, crafthousemagik.co.uk, where you can find my shop, which I sell my handmade project bags, hand-dyed yarn and progress keepers and stitch markers, etc. But you can also find links to the show notes there. So if you go to the website, there's a menu on the left hand side and you can click on blog and show notes and that'll take you to where my show notes are. So today I've got some knitting, some patchwork and quilting, some bobbin lace, some cross stitch, and a little bit of information on my shop update. So mostly it's hand-dyed yarn that'll be in the shop update, and it'll be the 28th of June at 7 PM. But I've also got a pattern that I'm releasing, but the pattern will be released earlier in the day, so you'll be able to get that both on my website and on Ravelry as well. But I'll talk more about that in a minute. So we've got two knit-alongs, craft-alongs going on at the moment over in the Ravelry groups. So the shawl along, spring shawl along that I was doing as a collaboration with Caroline from the Love to Sew podcast, that's finishing at the end of this month, the end of June. So don't forget to get your entries into the finished objects thread, which is on Caroline's Ravelry group. You can find links to that in the show notes. But we're still chatting along in the discussion thread, which is in my Ravelry group. But don't forget, it finishes at the end of June, so make sure you get your entries in before that finishes, before we close those threads. And we've got a new knit along going on at the moment. It's to do with socks, and it's called the Summer Sock Along. So it started at the midway through June and it's going to go right to the end of September, just to let you have plenty of time to finish all your lovely socks. Any sock pattern can be included, as long as it's for an adult, that's fine. So any socks at all, any whips that are under 50%, come and enter them into the finished object thread and chat about them in the discussion thread over in the Ravelry group. And that's in my Ravelry group, and you'll find links to that in the down bar as well as in the show notes. So I'm going to be drawing prizes from both the discussion thread and the finished objects thread, so don't forget to chat along. So the more you get involved in the discussion thread, the more chance you've got of winning a prize. And don't forget to put your finished objects in the finished objects thread. I'm rambling a bit now. Let's get on with the good stuff. So let's talk about the knitting. So last week I was working on my Llewellyn shawl, which, to be honest, I haven't done loads. You can see that I've finished the sort of detailed cable section, and I've got to this plain sort of section further up. I've got a circular needle case holding my needles, so I can't open it up too well. Oh, there we go, that's about right. So you can see how it's decreasing on this side, and it's going to be a triangle shape. So hopefully when that's blocked out, that'll come out a little bit neater. It might sort of look a little bit better when I've knitted a bit more as well. So the cables need sort of spreading out slightly so that you can see them, but that's coming out really nicely. So the Llewellyn pattern is by Isolde Teague, and I picked this pattern up from Edinburgh Yarn Festival, and I also picked up the yarn from the same shop. And the yarn is Soldier yarn, and you'll find links to the yarn and the pattern in my show notes as well. So I haven't got on with this loads, and I know that I'm not going to get it done before the end of the shawl along, I'm afraid. But I did do 2 other shawls for the shawl along, so it's not too bad. At least I've been sort of participating in shawl knitting. So that's my first sort of work in progress. So I've started a sock tube just because I couldn't be bothered to do the cutting apart of my other sock tubes, and my mum's been helping me with this, so it is quite long already. And this is some beautiful yarn that I picked up from Hayley at Ducky Darlings, and she's now got her online shop, duckydarlings.com. I'm getting my tongue tied at the moment. But isn't that a pretty colourway? Absolutely lovely. So I'm thinking about picking this turquoisey colour up that's just between where the darker tealy colour is and the creamy bit to do the heels and toes, and I'm basically going to knit the whole ball and make a couple of pairs of socks with it. This is how much I've got left, so I'm going to try and gauge it so that I manage to knit the whole ball into a massive tube so I don't waste much yarn. So we'll see how I get on with that, but it is looking massive. Ta-da! like I said though, Mum has been helping me knit this, and I'm knitting them on 4 double pointed needles because Mum doesn't like circulars, so we've been sort of sharing the project. So I'm basically cheating. I could do with a circular sock machine instead of having to get Mum to help me. Right, so that's my sort of second project on the needles. So I'm very excited to announce that I'm going to be releasing a new sock pattern. So this is what it looks like. So it's country garden socks, and it's a top-down sock pattern, and the aspects of the sock are inspired by an English country garden. So this is the trellis on top of the fence, and these are butterflies that are flying all around the garden, and they go right around the sock and down the top of the foot. And I've dyed the yarn especially to go with this sock pattern. So the sock pattern itself is country garden, and then the yarn I've dyed is English country garden, and you can see that it's pale blue, sort of a cloudy sky background with very delicate speckles of pink, purple and pale green in there. And then I've used a pale green contrast for the toes and the heels, and that colourway is going to be called Green Green Grass of Home, because you have to have a bit of Tom Jones. And I've just used it for heels and toes here. As you can tell, all my colourways are based on songs, because I just have to. I love a good song title. So it comes in various different sizes. So I like to write my patterns in 56, 60, 64, 68 and 72 stitch sock sizes, so that you can pick the stitch count that you like to use the best. So the heel pattern I've used this time is the lawn pattern, so you can see the grass going up the back of the heel, and that's why I had to do it in green. So there we are. So that's the sock pattern, and you'll be able to pick up sets of English country garden and Green Green Grass of Home, full skein and mini skein in the shop on Friday, which is the 28th of June at 7 p.m. And you'll be able to get hold of the pattern at 12 noon on the 28th of June, so that you'll be able to pick up your pattern and the sock set if you want to. So I've also knitted it in some self-striping yarn, but it didn't work out so well. So this was my sort of test knit, and this is in Knit Picks Felici colourway, because I wanted to test out how these butterflies would work in self-striping yarn. And I actually think those work quite well, but I'm not so keen of the trellis in it. So this was my sort of first test of knit of the pattern, and I decided to reduce the length of this when I started with this colourway. But I think that the butterflies work quite well with that. So that's the Knit Picks Felici in the soft serve colourway, and I've had this a little while now. I must have had it a couple of years, so it's very pretty, and it does remind me of Neapolitan ice cream. But again, I think that this pattern probably works better with one with a yarn that is a little bit less busy, so you can see those butterflies a bit better. I've basically got an odd sock of 2 different colourways of yarn so far, so I'm going to be finishing those up in the next couple of weeks, so I could be knitting that second sock at the same time as you're knitting my pattern if you'd like to have a go. So that's the pattern that I'm getting published tomorrow, but I've got a secret, so you've got to keep this secret. Don't let anybody know about this, but I've also got a cowl pattern that's going to come out soon, and I'm going to show you a sneaky peek at it. So this is how the cowl version of the pattern of the country garden cowl is working up. So, well, I finished it, the first sample, but it's got those butterflies, and I've done this in a sort of tonal grey, which is my Living on a Prayer colourway. So watch out for this in the future. So I'm planning on releasing that at the beginning of August so that we're getting a little bit cooler by then, hopefully, and getting ready for winter. So I think that'll be more like cowl weather just then. So watch out for that. We have the quilting section next. So the last time I spoke to you, I'd just finished my bamboo block, and I'm going to show you how I've got on with that. I totally said the last time I spoke to you that I'd have this finished. I haven't. So this is how I've got on so far. I've added some strips of different colours around the edge of the initial block in the centre, so you can see that I've got the bamboo block here, and I've just temporarily pinned the kimonos to this, so they won't be attached quite so crudely. They're just pinned at the moment. But here I'm going to have a free motion tree and some cherry blossom petals. But I think that you can see how that's coming along so far. It is a little bit creased. I should have perhaps given it a quick press before I showed it to you, but you can see what it's supposed to look like. What I did is once I'd attached 1.5 inch strips all the way round of 3 different colours of fabric, just to frame it a little bit, I've actually stitched in the ditch around all these lines around the edges to secure that in place, and I've also stitched either side of the bamboo to make those pop a little bit more. I've still got quite a bit to do for this, but it's going to be a wall hanging. And I also wanted to attach some leaves just onto the bamboo to make them a bit more like bamboo, but we're getting there slowly. I've just got some wadding on the back, and I haven't actually backed it properly. Once I've done all the sort of free motion and stuff, I'll put a backing on before I put my binding on, so that covers up all the stitching. Right, so that's how I've got on so far with that. I did have a couple of people put comments on the last video to show that they'd actually, or one person had found an origami video for a kimono that looked very, very similar to the kimonos I'd made, so I shall leave links to that in the show notes. And someone else also put a link for me to a YouTube video of another kimono pattern that was really pretty, so I will leave links to that in the show notes as well. So thank you very much. That's ever so good. I do like to hear what sort of patterns that you've been able to find. So the next section is bobbin lace. And I'll just grab my cushion from over here. And I finished the bookmark that I was making, but I didn't quite get time to finish the tassel that I normally put on the end. I've got my pin cushions in the way a bit here. Let's move that up. There we go. So you can see that it's still pinned to the cushion. I've actually finished all the bobbin lace. I just need to do the tail on it, which I can't remember how to do, so I've got to wait till my next lesson with my sort of teacher on Monday, so see how that gets. It's a really, really simple bobbin lace bookmark, but I'm just using up threads because I've got loads of bobbins that are full of thread and I don't want to just chuck the thread away. So hopefully I'll be able to show you that when it's off the cushion next week. So that's my bobbin lace. Oh, what I should say is the pattern was from a book called Beginner's Bobbin Lace, and I will leave a link to that in the show notes as well if you want to find that pattern. Next, I have my cross stitch section. So I feel as if I've worked loads on this, but it doesn't look very much. So I've been working on this sampler for a little while. And since the last time I showed it to you, I've done all the bouquet just there. I think I did the squirrel and some of this bird at the top, and also this sun, which is in the style of a sort of quilt block, it reminds me anyway. And then I've started the big tree at the bottom. So it might look a little bit strange, but there is flowers that I need to stitch onto the tree as well, which kind of fill in the gaps. But it's getting there slowly. I feel as if I'm getting there, even though that I'm feeling like I'm doing this forever. At least though I can take one little step at a time. This is quite a big tree, but these little pieces here, I can sort of do them in a few hours and feel like I've sort of achieved something. So that's how it's looking as a whole from at the moment, but it's got quite a lot to do yet. This is the sort of centre bit of the piece, and I've got loads to do, but hopefully it'll look nice in the end and I can frame it and put it on the wall. So that's my cross stitch for this week. I'm not going to show you one of my nanny's dresses this week because my parents are visiting and Barbara has gone and got herself stuck in the other spare room right at the back, so she's going to have a rest for this week. Right, so all we've got left to do is to tell you about my shop update. So, like I showed you before, I designed this new colourway, which is the English Country Garden, and I'll have sets of the yarn with the mini in the shop as well. So if you can purchase just the full skein if you didn't want to have the contrast as well. But the contrast will be big enough to actually, if you wanted to do the cuff, the heel and the toe, for the size cuff that I've used in this pattern, this mini will be big enough to do cuff, heels and toes if you stick to the length of cuff I did in this pattern. So those will be in the shop. So I've got quite a few tonals which I'll be popping in the shop on this Friday, and I've named them all after songs out of mostly 1980s, 90s, but some older ones as well. So I'll tell you about those colourways. So this one is a beautiful dusky pink, and I'm calling this Pretty in Pink, and this is after the song by the Psychedelic Furs from the 80s. Love that song, and I absolutely love this colour. I think I need a jumper in that colour. I might have to nick some of my stock. I've got this beautiful mustardy yellow, which I think would make a beautiful cardigan, and that is called Shiny Happy People, and that's after the REM song, which I also equally love. There we go. I have a pale turquoisey blue tonal, and that's called Cloud Busting after the Kate Bush song. Isn't that beautiful? I think that goes quite nicely with my hair. Might need to keep some of that as well. I have a very light grey, and I really like to get lots of greys, and I've already got sort of mid-tones and darker greys, and then this colour grey with speckles on, which is my Here Comes the Rain Again, but I decided to have one without speckles, and this one I thought it needs to be It's Raining Men. And that was by the Weather Girls, so inspired by It's Raining Men is the lovely pale grey. I have green, and this is the same as the mini that I'm putting with my English Country Garden set, but this green, it has to be the green grass of home, and it's inspired by the Tom Jones song Green Grass of Home, because if it's green it has to be a grass. Oh dear. And then lastly I've got a purpley colour, which is not coming up very well on the camera. It's not too bad. I'll actually pop a picture of this on the screen so you can see what the colour looks like. So it's a purpley pink shade. This one's going to be Purple Haze after the Jimi Hendrix, because I had to have a really cool song in there as well. So there we are. That's all my tonal yarns that I'm doing on my standard basis. So you'll be able to order any of those tonal yarns in any of my bases that I've already got listed in my shop. So that's a merino nylon base, 75% merino, 25% nylon, and I've got that in the 4-ply and the DK yarn as well. I've got 4-ply yarns which include Blueface Leicester mixed with nylon, that's 80% Blueface Leicester and 20% nylon. I've got an MCN in 4-ply, merino, cashmere and nylon, that's an 80-10-10 mix, and some singles as well, which is 100% superwash merino, and I think that's it. I think that's all my bases. I've probably missed one out. It's been a long day. So I'm also releasing a different yarn. So this is a camel mixed with silk, and I thought that this would be really lovely to knit up as a shawl especially. So they're very, very tonal colours, and it's this very lovely sandy coloured camel. And this colourway I've called Circle in the Sand, after the Belinda Carlisle song. And as this one was Belinda Carlisle, I thought the other ones should be named after Belinda Carlisle songs as well. So we've got Heaven is a Place on Earth, which is a very subtle pink colour, which is this one here. And then lastly, this is La Luna, which is also Belinda Carlisle song. So then there's those three very subtle colours, which are the camel and silk mixed together. So those will be available in the shop on Friday the 28th at 7 p.m. as well. So watch out for those. So this camel and silk base is a beautiful, soft, squishy yarn that I think will be absolutely ideal for shawls and things. So it's 50% camel and 50% silk, and there's 400 metres in 100 grams. So it's just a nice 4-ply weight. Absolutely beautiful. Might have to keep some of those for me too. Next week I'm going to have some large tote bags in my shop. So next week don't forget to watch the podcast, because you'll be able to see what the bags look like before I put them in the shop update on next Friday. So I think that's all I've got for today. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you'd like to see more, and I shall see you next week. Bye!